If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is the Stephen Avery series, and we're on episode 31, The Burn Barrels. Now, there's been a lot of speculation regarding the burn barrels, and if you haven't checked out the previous podcast, episode 30, the burn pit, and whether or not anyone was ever even burned in it, because this entire case is basically, this is such a farce. Anybody who's looked at this case long enough can see that this man's presumption of innocence has been violated, perhaps more so than in any other famous case. It's just absolutely bizarre. And the brainless guilters still maintain that this was a legitimate investigation and a legitimate trial and a legitimate conviction. It's really, really bizarre. They have clearly failed this common sense test for adults. But we're going to be looking at some mind-shocking revelations regarding the burn barrels. Now, obviously, anybody following the case knows that the chain of custody cannot be verified for these burn barrels. But there's even more funny business regarding the burn barrels, which we will examine, and of course the timeline of said burn barrels. And not to tease, but the next episode will be the most mind-shocking yet, as there's an aspect of the case that's not discussed that actually happened in the days after the alleged discovery of the remains and Avery's arrest, that it's probably the most mind-shocking information I have discovered as of yet, and I was sent anonymous information. I don't know the sources of those, but in the previous episode, Joris was the one who brought this information in comparison of the burn pit. Joris, or Joris74 on Reddit. He also has done a lot of good research regarding these burn barrels. And I get sent a lot of anonymous information or information with that's not credited, so I have no way of knowing whether it's a hodgepodge of info, a mishmash from different sources, because that's usually the information I get. It's just a whole bunch of different sources that a lot of times are not credited, and it's just thrown together and sent, and I just go over it. And that's what this podcast is, going over available information to see what can be deduced from such information. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications if you like the podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms to keep the awareness up about wrongful convictions, not just the Stephen Avery conviction, but many, many other wrongful convictions, which those hopelessly indoctrinated into the cult of authority worship cannot even comprehend that humans are fallible. And there's a lot of innocent people in prison. One, of course, is too many, and there are definitely more than one. And guilty or innocent, even if Stephen Avery is completely guilty, do we advocate following the actual laws on the books? Because otherwise, a lot of innocent people would be in prison if this kind of so-called investigation and so-called evidence is accepted as legitimate, because there's really no evidence that holds up to logical scrutiny to point to Avery's guilt, even if he's guilty. Even if he has a split personality and he's psychic and all these other things, he's the love child between MacGyver and a Navy SEAL, all these things that would have had to be true in order for him to be guilty, which I'm not saying they're not. Maybe those things are all true, but just the sheer amount of people that he walked around and talked to nonchalantly when he's supposed to be burning these remains for hours and hours at temperatures that cannot even be reached under these conditions. Guilters really like to ignore all laws of physics to try to make this evidence seem legitimate. But anyway, questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. You can check us out, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, and Patreon. Patrons do get a priority for case topic, co-podcast, or logical analyses requests. So, let's jump right into it here. This was posted about a year ago by Jariz. Stephen Avery's burn barrel photo comparison. I saw this conclusion on barrel. Stephen Avery burn barrel, as pictured near his driveway, is not the same as the pic shown on the right, being a barrel photographed on October 27, 2006 at Queso. These are in fact the same barrels when you study the bullet patterns. And you can see the folded rim versus the rolled rim and what is being passed off here in evidence. So these are two pics of Stephen Avery's burn barrel as photographed on his driveway. They clearly are taken from different sides as bullet patterns are not the same and the rim and green leaves are the differences. This is close-up of the pic on the right with arrows to compare patterns. Comparing this with the barrel on the right behind the dude's leg, you see the same pattern. So the barrel in Stephen Avery's lawn is the one in this pic. This pic is from January 13th, 2006. And here we have a whole picture of Stephen Avery's barrel on the right. Another way to prove this is the pattern of the barrel, which is at Queso. The circled 4-hole bullet pattern is also on the pic used in comparison with Stephen Avery's barrel on his lawn. You can see in this pic below that the upper 2 bullet holes seem to go straight through. If this happened with the lower 2 holes as well, you would see the mirror image on the other side of the barrel of this pattern. Now look at the very first pic, you will see this mirror image. The rest of the bullet holes on the 2 pics below compare with the second pic of Stephen Avery's barrel on his lawn. But the barrel rim on January 13th, 2006 looks different than the one on Stephen Avery's lawn. Now, this pic below is a part of the pic that January 13th, 2006 behind the dude. Compare it with the pic above from October 27th, 2006, both at Queso. Seems the same rim, and that there is actually rim on the barrel, although partly torn off. That torn off rim is probably what happened after covering it up and uncovering it later or during transport. This seems to have been the most rusted barrel, so a bit too rough would explain that. And here we have a photo from Stephen Avery's barrel, temporarily covered up on his lawn. And also we have side-by-side comparisons here. So very, very interesting. And the funny business where these corrupt law enforcement officials, the very, very interesting Ken Kratz, they would have everyone believe, they wanted to take it on faith with zero proof of chain of custody, zero proof of what is being alleged against Stephen Avery actually being legitimate. Now, how do people not find that problematic? It's just weird. I mean, even if it's true, I mean, whatever happened to beyond a reasonable doubt? I mean, I've said this many times now. I mean, this case is going to be taught in law schools as one of the most definitive wrongful convictions, botched so-called investigations. I mean, it's just such an obvious frame-up job. I mean, even if Avery's guilty, it's just this is the most obvious incompetence and or intentional framing as you can get. So it's hard to verify, and again, most crime lab corruption happens in the crime lab with switching labels. So I will be doing a specific episode on that as well, just crime lab corruption in general, because for whatever reason, the coincidence theorists and the illogical guilters, they can't wrap their head around the fact that humans are fallible and some humans are corrupt. And that combination, like what we have here, I mean, I don't think everybody's involved in the cover-up. It's kind of like any government employees. They're so indoctrinated into the cult of state and authority worship, they just take it on faith that the investigation is legitimate, what's being sent to them is legitimate, and they don't go out of their way to investigate possible corruption, frame up, label switching. They don't do that. So that's why an overseeing agency needs to do that. So now it's very difficult, again, between the tags and what's alleged. So supposedly 150-gallon barrel was taken from the Rodant deer camp. Now, audio logs go over information that the barrel contained the charred cell phone remains, and it was placed in the trailer that had returned with Avery's barrel on it. And from these photos, you have a lot of these barrels just grouped together. How do they know which is which? Now, let's assume law enforcement's not corrupt. I mean, this is just a sloppy job. Like, how has this all been documented? You have to prove the chain of custody. Now, if it is proved, the guilters can feel free to point that out, but they never do. So from all this information, I mean, it was raining at some point. They had tarps. I mean, the switcheroos could happen under tarps. I mean, by accident or on purpose. Either way, how is any of this evidence legitimate? I mean, it's just, even if Avery's guilty, again, I'm not saying he's innocent here. For the purpose of this argument here, all I'm doing is trying to chase down the chain of custody here to verify it, because in every other case that's legitimate, you have that, but in the Stephen Avery case, you don't. So this is a post by Rubber Ducky, a very astute researcher in the case. Very, very sharp for those that are familiar with Rubber Ducky's work. And here is a comment on this analysis with the barrels. I do not believe the barrels match at all. The rims are completely different. The matching of the bullet holes is vague and would need to be overlaid to see if the patterns match. Furthermore, number 645 was loaded onto the trailer by Matuzak and returned to the Avery property, and Wendy Baldwin was guarding the barrel number 7102 on November 7, 2005. Matuzak did return to Calumet Sheriff Office with only one barrel, number 7102, which Jeremy Hawkins took custody of. November 8th, 2005, Ken Kratz gives orders to go back and collect the barrel marked number 4, which is collected by Reimer on November 8th, 2005. The only barrels collected on November 8th, 2005 are barrels number 7921 and 7192, according to the CASO. One of the barrels is unmarked and the other is marked number 4. I mean, it's just the kind of funny business that can be pulled. I mean, even the silliest guilters, I mean, if they're not completely brain dead, they have to admit that if someone were to play switcheroo, it would not be that difficult to do so, if they were going to do it, without even getting into whether they did it or not. I mean, this is just a big mess here. So law enforcement were never claiming that barrels 7102 and 645 were the same. They show that they are not. The issue was between barrel 645, marked number 4 on it, dropped on November 7th, 2005, and barrel 7922, marked number 4 on it. So we have multiple barrels marked number 4. Again, it could just be incompetence. It might not be a frame-up job, or it might be. But even if it's just incompetence, none of this is legitimate if you cannot trace this chain of custody. So by all accounts, I mean, Redaunt was there on Halloween. Well, who's to say Redaunt didn't do something on Cuss Road, or someone else working for Redaunt, or someone else, and these were all collected at Redaunt's. Then they played switcheroo and either honestly mistook them for being on the Avery property. Either way, however you want to theorize, how is any of this beyond a reasonable doubt against Avery? And nobody can answer that question. It's very, I mean, it's insane. Rubber Ducky continues here. I did all of my own work that I present in the video, but I did work with a lady that has worked on barrels for a few years. She believes there are 11 total barrels. I have not been able to follow that thinking, but she did inspire me to work at mapping the actual flow of the evidence, and when the new photos came out, it was very helpful. All right. Someone else asked here, why was it first tagged number 645 and then afterwards number 7102? Was it first entered as evidence, then taken out elsewhere, evidence tags removed, then introduced as new evidence? Did they change what was inside the barrel between the swap, or what the hell is happening there? Rubber Ducky's video states some of the barrels were taken out, brought back, found on Avery Salvage Yard, found on Cuss Road. How can we be sure where those alleged Teresa Hallback electronics and Daisy Fuentes gene rivets were actually found in? So, and of course, number 645 was retagged 7922, not 7102 when it was returned from the Avery Salvage Yard. That was the rebuttal there. This is the only barrel of which it is documented that it was collected twice. So in what other case do we have barrels being taken as evidence, then returned to the property of the accused or nearby properties, then collected as evidence again with different numbers? I mean, how can anyone defend this so-called investigation as legitimate? I mean, it's just mind-shocking. It's mind-shocking. It's beyond me. Every time I think I've seen the most mind-shocking aspects of this case, just the sheer incompetence and or obvious frame-up tactics being used here, I mean, each is more mind-shocking than the last. And again, not to tease the next episode, but the next episode is going to be even more mind-shocking than this one. This is all unraveling, once again, obviously corrupt Manitowoc officers, corrupt state officials. They did not know there would be a documentary made about their frame-up. So they didn't know that this level of scrutiny would be put upon them, because once you actually objectively, neutrally, and logically examine what's going on here, it's all quite obvious, isn't it? So here's another very interesting post regarding the burn barrels. So this was posted by Schmuck Next Door, and this was on TikTok Manitowoc, probably the best Reddit subreddit you can go for the case regarding Stephen Avery. It is not infiltrated with shills and the like, so real discussion can take place there. Queso, the case of the worst pullout game, the deer camp burn barrels. There definitely is new info in this series of posts. To save time of trying to credit the original researchers, or at least who I think the original researcher that found or FOIA'd the info, I'm simply going to link to these posts from Joriz, Seeking, Henbury, Jinx, and ODog123. Barrels. Finally, I believe we have all the barrels that have been uncovered. There's 8 physical burn barrels, 9 burn barrels on paper. So again, let's compare and contrast. How many other cases can't even keep track of what was collected as evidence? How many other cases have evidence being taken from a location, then being returned from the location, possibly with more planted evidence in them, or even if not, then collected back again as new evidence? I mean, this is insanity. This is mind-shocking insanity. So, we have the P-tag 642, 643, 644, 645, 7201, 7921, 7922, 7958, 7963. So 642, 643, 644, 645 are all Janda. These were collected November 7th, November 8th. Now, 7201 is Stephen Avery's, November 7th, 2005. 7921 is also, that's Avery's brother, November 8th. Recycled barrel number 4, 7922, and then the deer camp barrels marked 7958, 7963, collected, dated November 12th, 2005. So, from Ledger 05209, we have item 1, P-tag 7958, date November 12, 2005, description, burnt material, deer camp barrel. Now, here's another problem that the guilters don't like talking about. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Did Avery go to Redonce to burn some things, then bring them back to his own property where one of his personalities wanted to incriminate himself? I mean, again, we haven't really had a coherent, logical case on how Avery perpetrated this crime. Killed her in the bedroom, killed her in the garage again, and did the greatest cleanup job in the history of crime. Then he's going to all these locations to burn her. I mean, how does that make any sense? It just, while going around his property talking to all these people, and then of course his property crawling with so many different people, as I've gone over in previous podcasts. How does that make any sense? I mean, it's insane. P-tag 7960, these are all dated November 12th, 2005, is burnt bone, 7961 burnt material, 7962 burnt material, 7963 burnt material, 7964 burnt bone pieces, barrel number 2. So item 1, page 95 in the ledgers show 7958 as being deer camp burn barrel. 7958 is also stored in outside secure storage. Scanning down the page, 7960 burnt bone, 7961 burnt material, 7962 burnt material, 7964 burnt bone pieces, barrel number 2. So that brings us to 7963 burnt material deer camp, which is stored in outside secure storage, exactly the same as burn barrel 7958. In turn, making it a burn barrel and not contents or burnt material as described in ledgers. Then comparing the storage of the barrels throughout all the ledgers, they all correlate with being stored outside in secure storage. Once again, making them all burn barrels. The correct protocol that should have been used through and through would be property tag of evidence. property tag of contents taken from evidence tag, then property tag of bone from contents. They obviously didn't do this for a lot of evidence, which is a dead giveaway. And now, again, a quick aside, in other cases when protocol is not followed, the evidence is thrown out. I mean, when has protocol been followed in this case? I mean, again, the conflict of interest regarding Manitowoc versus Calumet, and yet Manitowoc, these same guys are finding all the evidence, or planting it, however you want to describe that. I mean, there seems to have been no protocol followed throughout this entire case. The ambiguous barrel number 2 is also backed up with Pevito's testimony and Eisenberg's second report. Furthermore, based on the sequential numbering of property tags on the ledger, it makes 7964 being sifted from barrel number 2, except it's not Janda burn barrel number 2, it's Deer Camp barrel number 2. Not only that, but the contents of Janda burn barrel number 2 were long gone before Queso's resifting. Oh man. Oh man. Note, knowing the layout of barrels in situ per Ertl testimony and comparing the raised ring towards the top of the Queso storage image of barrel number 4 with Exhibit 52, the barrel on the southeast side of Exhibit 52 excludes a ring toward the top of the barrel, leaving Janda burn barrel number 4 only to be located on the southwest side of the 4 grouped barrels. I couldn't find any photos of the opposite side of Exhibit 52, but if there is an image floating around, feel free to check and see if the raised ring is one of the barrel in that location. So here we have the from the Cuss Road search. We are lucky enough to also have radio transmissions during the search of Cuss Road. Here's a few you might enjoy that are specifically regarding Cuss Road. Note, Kucharski was looking for a digital camera on the 7th, and deputy number 806 had the camera. Based on time and date, it doesn't look like the digital pics from the camera Kucharski references were included in the Queso image dump.
But we need Mark Uyghur to contact the DA's office right away.
827, what section are you in? North. 827. Good. Do you want to give Mark a call on his cell phone? 4087. Well, be a few minutes and finish up on a traffic stop. 829, 839. 829, 839. 29 or 39, if you can copy, that second team is on their way in. They are supposed to be with you. Do not start without them. Fred. 29 to 39, can you copy? Have you started? It's a 3 bed. What's your status, Gary? Has anybody walked out to you yet? I really haven't joined. 10-4. The north group should pretty well be completed out to Cuss Road. Shortly, you should be approach your position from the north heading south through the quarry just to the north of you there. I'm hoping those other 2 teams should come out in front of you from the south. Sounds like they may come out together at that point. Come on. 829 and 839. 1029, just trying to get an idea of where you're at and how it's going. 829 at 839. 29 and 39, just trying to get an idea of where you're at and how it's going. 829 to 839, 1021 red pack with Louis cell. Tick codes 834. 34. I understand you're going to be taking care of those items in our garage.
Those items in the garage.
I'm not sure. I'm going to be answering evidence once I get to the office that to talk about. Those people are here now. I'll give you a call. Jennifer. 829, 830. Get availability, give me a call. Jennifer.
Those people? I don't know what to make of that. The listeners out there can give their own opinion on all of these issues, these second teams, and all of this funny business going on Cuss Road, talking about entering evidence from Cuss Road. I mean, it's really, really bizarre. And then also here we have a forensic mapping timeline. So Trooper Jason Swartz was charged with maintaining a timeline to reference which locations were forensically mapped during the course of the project. And November 7, 2005, there's a 3 p.m. entry. Troopers Austin and Schwartz, cul-de-sac at the end of Cuss Road. And there's a lot missing there. Where's the information from this particular search? So let's go to part 2, and this is referring to the black garbage bags, where we, of course, don't know much regarding these. Very, very bizarre. Along with a more in-depth approach of how evidence was planted based on a post I made over 2 years ago. And this is again from the schmuck next door. This post again, TikTok Manitowoc, several years ago. Siders falsely testified at trial about custody of Stevens burn barrel. Redon's affidavit describes November 7th, Matuzak's drive times correlate to an extra trip to the sheriff's office. I know that some of the info on here is rehashed, so I've included links to the original post, TikTok Manitowoc post. I apologize in advance if I missed some links to the post. Okay, timeline. November 7th, 2005, 7:15 a.m. Erdl, Cates, and Zhang are headed for the SO in Chilton. 8 a.m. Manitowoc Sheriff's Office A-team of Bushmen, who's coming out of retirement, Siders, Just, and Sanglob begin their journey. 8:05, Erdl, Cates, and Zhang begin processing burn barrel number 4. So this is 8:05 a.m., a covered and locked trailer inside a locked and evidence tape sealed detached service garage. We set up sifting in the garage and began examining the contents of the barrels, beginning with the 2 of interest to the dog. These contained a lot of burned food and game animal material, including chicken, fish, and deer, some hair, metal items, and as many unassociated bones as possible were recovered. The first barrel was finished and the second begun. So, and the beginning of that, arrived at sheriff's office, met with Jeremy Hawkins, and gained access to burned barrels, which were in a covered and locked trailer. Okay, so this is from motion for post-conviction release, Exhibit 82. So, 10:35 a.m., Weigert called Dietering, requesting an officer to report to Cuss Road about a possible burial site. Case report, page 137. 10:45 a.m., Dietering arrives at Cuss Road. Bushman tells him about the possible burial site he found. Queso 137. 11:51 a.m., Redaunt signs in at the yard. Queso crime scene log. 12:29 p.m., Redaunt signs in at the yard. Again, from the Queso crime scene log. Redaunt's affidavit points to November 7th. I left work and drove to the hunting camp. When I arrived, there was nobody present. I unlocked my trailers and left. It is my understanding that my trailers were then searched by scent tracking dogs as well as law enforcement personnel. Using the crime scene sign-in logs, Ertl's report, and Weigert's Queso report, page 145, I've narrowed to the date Redaunt describes in his affidavit, motion for post-conviction relief, Exhibit 85, down to specifically November 7th, Ertl's report. West of Stephen Avery's residence, the site was observed, and upon written consent from the property owner, photographs were taken and the site was examined. Weigert's Queso report, page 145. It should be noted Joshua had previously given us written permission to enter and search all of his property, which surrounds the Avery property. 12:30 p.m., Ertl, Cates, and Zhang return from lunch and continue processing burn barrel number 2. From motion for post-conviction relief, Exhibit 82. 12:30 p.m., continued the second barrel until it was requested that we return to the scene to examine a potential burial site located by volunteer searchers as disturbed soil on a direct path from Stephen's residence taken by a bloodhound following the scent from Teresa's shoe insole and of interest to a cadaver dog. 12:31 p.m., Siders and Sanglob sign out, Queso crime scene log. 12:50 p.m., Siders and Bushman sign in. Sanglob doesn't sign in again until 7:52 a.m. on November 8th. Again, from the Queso crime scene log. 12:50 to 1:15 p.m., Siders finds the cell phone in the burn barrel. And this is from the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office report, page 13. Siders falsely testified about the custody of Stephen's barrel. This is trial day 6. Kratz, and was there anybody from the Division of Criminal Investigation that you turned over custody of the barrel to? Siders said, yes, there was. Kratz, who was that? Siders says, Kevin Heimerl. Kevin Heimerl? Correct. So this is direct examination of Heimerl at trial, custody of Stephen's burn barrel, trial day 9. Let me show you, so this is Kratz, let me show you what's been received as Exhibit 51. Can you tell us what we're looking at here, please? Heimerl says, that is a steel burn barrel. Kratz, does this look familiar to you? Heimerl, yes, it does. Kratz, what steel burn barrel is this? Heimerl, this is a steel burn barrel that was essentially in the front yard of Stephen Avery's trailer. Now, why is he adding the word essentially? Either it was or it wasn't. I mean, it's weird. A lot of times when people lie, they add unnecessary words. Again, we'll be examining psychological aspects and all of that in a later podcast. Kratz, after initially being discovered, were you asked to take control of or begin what's commonly referred to as the processing of this piece of evidence? Heimerl says yes. Kratz, describe what that entailed for the jury, please. Heimerl, at the time I was present at the command post and was contacted by Agent Fassbender and informed that a burn barrel in front of Stephen Avery's residence had been found to potentially contain items of evidence. Myself and Special Agent James Seiler were assigned to walk down to the trailer, meet with the law enforcement officers that had discovered it, and to begin basically to secure it and to begin documenting. Why not just say to secure it and begin basically to secure it? So not exactly? Okay. Cross-examination of Heimerl at trial. Custody of Stephen's burn barrel. Trial day 9. Okay. Buting, did you come to the scene, the Avery property scene, though, on the 7th, as I recall your testimony, right? Heimerl says, yes, Buting. And that's when you took custody, or did you just examine this burn barrel that we saw up on the screen a while ago? Heimerl, I did not take custody of it. I photographed it. And there you have it. Siders falsely testifies about custody of Stephen's burn barrel. The time that Siders signs back into the salvage yard is 12:50 p.m. That means after he signs back in, it takes only 25 minutes to do what he states in his report. He contacts Sanglob, who is in the area north of the barrel. Sanglob arrives and looks at the cell phone in the barrel. Sanglob calls Bushman. Bushman arrives and observes the barrel. Bushman calls the OIC, officer in charge. DCI arrives and takes custody of the burn barrel. Baldwin is then requested to stand by the burn barrel. Okay, in my opinion, the cell phone didn't make it to the barrel until later. 1:15 p.m., Baldwin was requested to guard the burn barrels. KSO report, page 135. 1:15 p.m., Matuzak signs out and travels to the sheriff's office to acquire the trailer containing burn barrel number 4. This is from the KSO crime scene log. The request for burn barrel number 4, where the cell phone is discovered. At 1:15 p.m., Baldwin stands by the burn barrel. At the same time, Matuzak signs out to pick up the evidence trailer along with burn barrel number 4 back to the sheriff's office. Hawkins states in his report, case report, page 135, that Ertl, Cates, and Zhang are in the process of going through burn barrel number 2 when they are called back and burn barrel number 4 is placed onto the trailer. John Ertl, Charles Cates, and Guang Zhang got through barrel mark number 4 and were in the process of going through barrel number 2 when they were called back to the scene. Barrel mark number 4 was placed back on the trailer. 1:40 p.m., Ertl, Cates, and Zhang returned to Cuss Road as per motion for post-conviction release Exhibit 82. November 7, 2005, 1:40 p.m., we returned to the scene and were briefed by Investigator Weiger and then escorted to the apparent burial site not far into the bush, south at the end of Cuss Road, approximately a half mile to the west of Stephen Avery's residence. 2:40 p.m., Ertl, Cates, and Zhang sign in. KSO crime scene log. 2:51 p.m., Ertl, Cates, and Zhang sign out and head over to Cuss Road. 3 p.m., Cates returns to the yard to finish processing the Honda and Renault for Leighton Prince. Notice of motion for post-conviction relief, Exhibit 82. Matuzak arrives at the salvage yard with burn barrel number 4 at 3:25 p.m. as per KSO crime scene log. Also, as per the log, 3:37 p.m., Kratz signs into the salvage yard. That's right. Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz. Very special indeed. 3:39 p.m., Matuzak retrieves the burn barrel in front of Stevens. Burn barrel number 4 at the salvage yard, as per KSO report, page 143 and 152. 3:41 p.m., Kratz signs out of the salvage yard as per KSO crime scene log. What was he even doing there? Was Kratz himself planting the cell phone? And that is what is theorized. Because if it's planted before 3:41 and 4:20 p.m., when Matuzak signs out and heads back to the sheriff's office as per the crime scene log and KSO report, page 143, Matuzak is ordered to drop off burn barrel number 4 in the gravel pit before returning on the way back to the sheriff's office. Matuzak stops, the trailer doors are opened, both barrels are removed, the cell phone is tossed in Stevens' barrel. Someone snaps a pic, Exhibit 156, cell phone inside barrel. Stevens' barrel is loaded back on the trailer and off Matuzak goes. So that's how easy it is. If it was planted, that is all that would have to be done. I mean, again, not rocket science here. The grass in the lower right-hand corner isn't any way to dispute this. The entire quarry was bordered with grass. Heimerl never testified about specifically Exhibit 156, the cell phone inside the barrel. Kratz never asked about this pic. I wonder why. On Monday, November 7, 2005, at approximately 1544 hours, I, Deputy Kenneth R. Matuzak of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, took into evidence a 50-gallon burning barrel. It was located on the northeast corner of Stephen Avery's property. The burning barrel was filled approximately 1/4 of the way with burned debris. The burning barrel was placed in an enclosed trailer. I then transported the burning barrel to the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, collecting the cremains in burn barrel number 4. From the time that Matuzak leaves the gravel pit is when the cremains are collected and tossed into burn barrel number 4. 5:45 p.m., Ertl and company finish at the burial site as per motion for post-conviction release Exhibit 82. And this info, is shown 1:45 p.m., November 7, 2005. West of Stephen Avery's residence, see diagram, the site was observed and upon written consent from the property owner, photographs were taken and the site was examined. White plastic sheeting protruded from the ground on either side of the area, 3 feet in diameter, devoid of plants. apparent decomposed wood or peat-like material. Some moss lay nearby, uprooted. However, there was no sign that the soil had been excavated and replaced, and numerous small bits of the plastic sheeting appeared to have shed from the exposed material and lay on the surface. Once a warrant was obtained, the site was excavated. The area devoid of plants appeared to be peat moss, and the plastic sheet, the remnants of a peat moss bag, as per the label on the underside. Beneath the bag was the decomposing remains of a wooden pallet. The surrounding root mat extended under and up through the plastic sheet. The area was excavated further, and no disturbance to the soil layering was evident. Finished 5:45 p.m. So 6:15 p.m., Ertl confers with Weigert and Fassbender as per motion for post-conviction release, Exhibit 82. Date November 7, 2005, 6:15 p.m. Conferred with investigator Weigert and Tom Fassbender and then proceeded back to the SO in Chilton to finish processing the barrels. A fifth barrel, reportedly containing remnants of Motorola cellular phone, had also been transported to the SO in Chilton. 7 p.m. Redaunt meets with Weigert at the salvage yard as per Queso report, page 145. Redaunt's affidavit revisited. A few days after November 5th, I remember seeing tower lights in the Manitowoc County sand and gravel pit. What tower lights is he talking about? So here's a photo of these set-up lights. Perhaps those. Joshua stated he wished to talk to me about a phone call he had received. He stated that on November 6, 2005, at approximately 1900 hours, he received a call at his residence. The word residence stands out to me. Redaunt clearly doesn't live at the deer camp. In my opinion, in his affidavit, the night he's remembering the lights being on in the Manitowoc County pit is the 7th. Also, if you don't want to believe this, this is the night Redaunt is talking about, November 7th is the last day he ever signed in or out on the log sheet. Okay, 7:21 p.m., Matuzak returns from the SO as per Queso crime scene log. Back at headquarters, 7:30 p.m., Ertl gains access to the service garage as per notice of motion for post-conviction relief, Exhibit 82. Ertl states in his report when he gets back to the SO, they gain access to the garage, but not access to the evidence trailer. November 7, 2005, 7:30 p.m. We gained access to the garage, but not the trailer supposedly containing the fifth barrel, and finished processing the contents of the second burn barrel. He doesn't explicitly state that the evidence trailer is or isn't there. He simply states that they didn't gain access to it. This is his way of covering his team's expletive. No, I don't think that Ertl, Cates, or Zhang had anything to do with physical planning of the evidence. November 7, 2005, 7:30 p.m., we gained access to the garage, but not the trailer supposedly containing the fifth barrel, and finished processing the contents of the second burn barrel. Okay, Hawkins' report versus Ertl's testimony. In his report dated November 8th, Hawkins states that he made contact with Kratz regarding burn barrel number 4 being returned. This content is simply for Hawkins to cover his own expletive because he has no idea what is really going on with burn barrel number 4. I contacted District Attorney D.A. Kenneth Kratz and asked D.A. Kratz about keeping the barrels. I was advised by D.A. Kratz that the barrels from the Avery property would remain in evidence. D.A. Kratz also wanted the barrel marked number 4 that was returned to the Avery property to be brought back. After talking with D.A. Kratz, arrangements were made for long-term storage in the back garage of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Fallon, okay, and directing your attention again then to Tuesday, November 8th, did you resume work with respect to the burn barrels? Ertl says yes. Fallon, what time did you start that day? Ertl, 8 a.m. Fallon, all right. Ertl, we finished up with the burn barrels about 10:45. Fallon, and how many barrels did you in fact examine that day? Ertl, 3. There were 2 from the original 4, and then there was a 5th barrel that had been recovered and brought to the garage. Ertl signs in at the yard, so his testimony matches the sign-in sheet. I'd bet that Ertl can count to 5, as in the 5 barrels that were processed. All right, let's look at Matuzak's drive times. Matuzak gets the call that burn barrel number 4 needs to be picked up in the gravel pit. 9:32 p.m., Matuzak signs out as per case of crime scene log. Matuzak's sign in and out times are very suspicious, being that he was the hauler of the evidence trailer. His time should be looked at in reverse. Not the time that he's at the yard, but the time he's away from the yard. So his sign out was 1:10 p.m., sign in 3:25 p.m. Timeout, 2 hours, 15 minutes. Description, picked up evidence trailer at SO. Sign out, 4:20 p.m., sign in, 7:21 p.m. Timeout, 3 hours, 1 minute. Dropped off evidence at SO. Sign out, 9:32 p.m., sign in, 12:02 p.m., 3 hours. Speculation, picks up evidence trailer at SO. In my opinion, the times do point to making an extra special trip at 9:32 p.m. to grab the evidence trailer. Again, we have motive, means, and opportunity here. So that cannot be disputed, whether they planted or didn't plant. We have motive, means, opportunity, a whole bunch of discrepancies and funny business. I mean, it's just mind-shocking. So November 8th, 2005, 12:02 p.m., Matuzak signs in as per case or crime scene log. On the way back, he stops at the quarry. Burn barrel number 4 is loaded up. He drives to the yard. Planting bones in the pit. Burn barrel number 4 is taken off the evidence trailer and dumped in the pit. Move some garden tools around, then loaded back into the trailer. 12:06 p.m., Matuzak signs out as per case or crime scene log. When he's signing in for the 4 minutes he's there, someone grabs burn barrel number 4 from the trailer and dumps the bones in Steven's pit. They load the burn barrel back in the evidence trailer. Matuzak signs out and gets the evidence trailer back to the SO. Simple done good is better than complicated done poorly. I'm a firm believer in the saying, simple done good is better than complicated done poorly. What is more simple than physically planting evidence using the same exact protocol used to collect evidence? There is virtually no way of getting caught. Find evidence, get trailer to haul evidence, plant evidence, return trailer to SO. So this is a very interesting theory on how it was all planted, because a lot of the guilters pretend it would be difficult, but obviously it'd be very easy, as lined out here. Or even just switching labels at the lab. That'd probably be even easier. So these funny games of switcheroos, I mean, it's crazy. You don't see this in other cases. In other cases, you have a clear chain of custody. Here's another astute post from Joris in response to this theory, in response to the case of the worst pullout game regarding the documentation of all these barrels. Nice post. Barrels, always a nice topic to bury oneself in. Personally, I doubt if there are 8 physical barrels in Queso custody. Per the images of the inside Queso's back garage, they only show 6 present. I believe that from November 10th on, the back garage was also used to store buckets from the quarry and other outside Avery salvage yard places. For example, Ledger 05-197, page 61, shows debris pile ash number 8480 and 8481 that per Queso report is 5-gallon buckets are getting location tag back garage, like it shows with the Janda barrels. Per November 11th, numerous quarry buckets were taken into custody that were presumably stored there too. Per Queso images, number 7958, image 2644, and number 7963, image 2646, are both buckets with Deer Camp Burn Barrel written on it. Interesting tidbit, the evidence tape on both buckets is torn or cut. You can't make this stuff up. November 12th, between 7 and 9 a.m., the state arson team, Eben and Pevito, picked up the items from Deer Camp and Mikkel's quarry. They then drove to Queso Chilton to process the Janda burn barrels, supposedly again? That part I do not understand. If Ertl has already sifted the contents and processed it before, on November 7th and the 8th, they then claim to have found bone in barrel number 2, which per Queso report would be the Janda barrel. And at the same time, DCI, Eben and Pevito, handed over the items to Reimer they picked up from DCMQ. That could be a reason why this ledger would hold a Janda barrel bone. It could also mean an opportunity to plant or relabel a human bone to be found in the Janda barrel. But why do that if you want to frame Avery? This makes me believe that DCI actually processed the Janda barrels, but I cannot rhyme this with Ertl's activities. Maybe Ertl's job was just to sift the unimportant from the important, and DCI looked at the important pieces, calling it processing, and concluding something was bone with possible tissue. I don't know. So, yeah, there's a lot of issues with all of this. And, I mean, the funny business is really undeniable here. Now, regardless of whether they framed Avery or not, regardless of whether Avery's guilty or innocent, the funny business cannot be denied. And that was the purpose of this podcast, to just show how the chain of custody regarding these barrels is just botched to the nth degree. Incompetence, corruption, whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, we have motive, means, and opportunity. Also, none of those can be denied. Again, I'm not pretending to know what the real truth is. Maybe it was planted, maybe it wasn't. But motive, means, opportunity, all there. The $36 million lawsuit, the bruised egos. It's really mind-shocking how some people just can't fathom how this could be carried out. It's so simple. I mean, it's beyond simple. So that was the purpose of this podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, leave them in the comment section. You can check us out, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic requests. Depending on your Patreon tier, you could also be a guest on the podcast. You can check us out, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and Patreon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and share the podcast across social media platforms. Keep the awareness up. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.